had something that happened this morning that is so timely and relevant to what we've been talking about. I was at the gym.
Here you're like, I love the gym and I welcome everybody. And let me just tell you that I have donated to my gym every year for I don't know how many years.
This woman came up to me and then she starts to just open up, right? She kept saying, I'm just afraid of taking up space, or I'm afraid of getting into other people's space.
The one message I want to put out to her in particular is, Missy, you go, woman. Own your life and take your space. Woman, yes, I'm so proud of you.
I wish I had a little pocket Elizabeth that I could just tuck into my lapel pocket and be like, oh, hold on, really sweet, nice lady. Hold on, you need to talk to my friend Elizabeth.
It was commented that Ginger Rogers does everything that Fred Astaire does, but is able to do it backwards and in high heels.
Yes.
And
the learning process is a journey. It's messy. That's totally
messy
okay.
And imperfect.
Messy and imperfect. Welcome to Simply Enough. This is Zachary and Elizabeth, and thanks for tuning in.
If you're liking our podcast, we'd love it if you'd share with your friends and family.
And then rate and review to raise our visibility and spread the message of enoughness.
We love you, and remember, you are simply enough.
Just as you are.
Period.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Simply Enough. I'm Mr. Zachary Leonard.
And I'm Dr. Elizabeth Ignacio.
Dr. Ignacio, can I kick us off today?
Please do.
I had something that happened this morning that I just feel like it's so timely and relevant to what we've been talking about. And I just want to launch into it if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So I was at the gym, and I typically go to the gym in the morning before work. And it's January, and the gym is a lot more busy, let's say, than it usually is, which as a frequent gym goer, I love, right? It's such a safe space for me and has become such a place of therapy for me and time for me that I actually welcome people coming back to the gym and in hopes that they find something similar for them that means to me. So it doesn't bother me like it does some other people that the parking lot is fuller and you might have to wait for a machine or whatnot. But
I can't help but laugh though. I'm sorry to interrupt, because here you're like, I love the gym and I welcome everybody. And let me just tell you that I have donated to my gym every year for I don't know how many years. That's my donation. So anyway, sorry to interrupt.
Well, no,
you are using your gym membership fee very well, I'm sure. Yes, I'm a great donor to my gym with the membership fee.
Well, and to that point, when I was younger, I asked for a weight set for Christmas, and I think it sat there in the garage, my parents' garage, and just became a place to put things on, right? Like hang towels on it, or like stack boxes. And there were many years where, yes, I was equally contributing to my my
the donation, yes,
the donation, yes, which is not a tax write-off, unfortunately.
I know, right? Gosh. So anyway, I interrupted. Sorry.
No. So today I was on a machine, and this woman came up to me and she asked if I was almost done using the machine. And of course, me, I've got like my headphones on, looking equally like don't talk to me as I am trying to like still somewhat be like approachable. Anyway, so I like take off my headphones and I'm, what do you need? And she's like, are you almost done? And I said, I have 2 more sets, but let me get through them pretty quickly so you can get on them. And she goes, thank you so much. I've just been waiting for all these other machines. There's just so many people. And then she starts to just open up. Right.
So it's therapy for her too.
Yes. So picture it. I've got like one earbud in one hand trying to like listen to her. Right. And I'm like clearly indicating, let me get done so that, you can have the machine. But anyway, she just this lovely sweetheart of a woman launches into some things that are connected with what we've been talking about. So the first thing she says is that this is her New Year's resolution. She wants to get into shape, and this is her first time being back in the gym in a very long time, and that gyms intimidate her. And, because there's such spaces, she said, of men, which I totally understand, and often like somewhat physically intimidating men. And she's this like small kind of petite woman. And also just the number of people, she thinks she goes in with a plan and then she tries to follow that plan and she can't because a machine is taken or the bands are taken or the weights are taken. So there's just kind of all these things that are affecting her motivation to keep going to the gym. And then she kept saying, she goes, I'm just afraid of taking up space, or I'm afraid of getting into other people's space. And it just made me wonder how many people, and myself included, because I will admit, back when I did have more resolutions, the fear or the nervousness about other people's domains, right, that they're not as familiar with, may be a hindrance to them maybe finding something or pursuing a resolution or a goal or objective that is in an area that they're just not as familiar with or as comfortable. And I also thought about like our podcast. If somebody, a friend of mine had said that one of her resolutions was to start to listen to more podcasts, including ours.
Oh,
and so I know, right? Thank you. But I also thought about that moment of maybe like logging on or pulling up the podcast app and seeing, this is amazing how many episodes we have, and potentially that fear of, or overwhelming feeling of like, oh my gosh, 50 something episodes might be in some ways somewhat of a similar feeling for this woman who, is really trying to evolve herself, or like, set an objective for herself, like we've talked about. And I just kept thinking about it today, and I needed to bring it up because there were so many little nuggets connected with what we've talked about. But I just kept hearing fear, right? Fear of she said, of taking up somebody else's space, which I thought was an interesting way to say it, right? Fear of also going into a domain that isn't as familiar to her, right? In this case, the gym. But also just a deep desire to do this and to find this for herself. So I just throw that out there today as just the launch of our conversation, and really just want to kind of dig into it a little if we can.
Or dig into a lot, because let me just tell you, like, pretty much like if this were to be written out, I would say every line of the paragraph that you just said, there's something there. Let me just tell you. Yes. And so thank you for this story and for kicking it off. If you run into this woman, again, please tell her, ideally to listen to at least this episode, or at least just tell her that we talked about it, because the one message I want to put out to her in particular is, Missy, you go, woman. You are a badass for however, years you may have lived your life. I don't know how old you are, but, own your life and own what you're bringing to the table. And people don't know your story. I bet you have overcome far more than many. So own that. And the fact that you're even there and that you are showing up, take your damn space, woman. Yes. I'm so proud of you. So anyway, if you can just relay that.
Well, I did say to her that we did have the podcast, and I invited her to listen, and she was very sweet about it. She was like, oh, well, I'll definitely check it out. And then she kind of I know this is such a tangent. She like held up her phone, which was an iPhone. And she was like, how do I find it? And I'm like, I can help you here. Right.
Yes.
And so showed her the podcast app, showed her where it was and everything. So we had a nice little connection there. But I said, at the end of the conversation, I said, this is so relevant to what we've been talking about lately. Do you mind if I reference this in an upcoming episode? And she said, absolutely. So I know the next time I see her, I will tell her. To check it out. Yes.
But let me just, there's just so many things, like I said, that you said there that I was like, yep, check. Yes, we'll talk about that. And we'll talk about that. And we'll talk about that. So as a 5'1" immigrant, person of color, Filipina, female in a man's world, in a very alpha male profession, 5'1", let's talk about taking up space. And there's just a couple of things there. So one thing is, jokingly, people know and have commented how I'm often in heels. Mm-hmm. High heels, as in shoes. Mm-hmm. And even when I was featured on the cover of a magazine and there was an article about me, one of the things that was commented on was that I was wearing heels. And God bless the editor, her editorial comment, which was so sweet, was you can't help but notice that under her scrubs, Dr. Ignacio is wearing high heels. And I couldn't help but think of Fred Astaire's partner, Ginger Rogers. It was commented that Ginger Rogers does everything that Fred Astaire does, but is able to do it backwards and in high heels.
Yes.
And anyway, I digress. But the point is that like people often have commented and do comment on like the heels that I'm wearing and like what shoes are you wearing today, Dr. Ignacio? And it's just so funny. I wear it actually more for comfort. I have tight Achilles, if anybody wants to know that. And so I'm actually more comfortable in heels, and I walk better in heels than I do actually in flats. But also, yeah, it does give me a little bit of kind of a power stance, given that I am, 5'1", diminutive, especially in an alpha male profession. And I own that. And if in my own mind it helps me, then I am going to wear my heels, and I am going to take up my space to the point where I literally feel and think that I am taller than I really am. I think I told this story about how when I was pregnant with my first child and I was getting, measured for height for my vitals at the doctor's office, and they said, okay, well, Dr. Nasser, we're going to take your height and weight. How tall are you? Just so we can kind of have a ballpark. And I said, well, don't tell anybody this, because I tell everybody that I'm 5'3", but really I'm 5'2". And then they measured me. They're like, nope, you're 5'1", Dr. Ignacio. But in my mind, I want to try to carry the stature of being 6 foot tall. And so take up that space. And in terms of taking up that space, there is a phrase or a term, I should say, man spread. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but certainly I have run into that in terms of, that guy. And not every man does this, by the way. So again, that's why this is like humorous term. I'm not like, subjecting all men to the stereotype, but it is a stereotypical term. So there is that guy, with a capital G, that guy who, whenever he sits, he spreads his legs, or he takes both armrests in the plane, or he leans over onto, my space. That's the man spread. And there is a subliminal message, which is like, I'm going to take up as much space as I can, and my space is more important than your space. You make yourself smaller so that I can take up my space. I mean, that's a real thing, this man spread. Again, everybody, I'm not saying all men do this, okay? So, but there is this terminology, the man spread, and that is what happens. And so, sometimes when I give speeches and motivational talks, especially to like women executives, I say, take up space. Do not be afraid to take up space. Be a real estate developer, own your space and develop your space, because we are all entitled to that. And I can't help but hearken back to, this should be a drinking game every time I mention this show. Ted Lasso, when the owner of the football club, Rebecca, who already is just this gorgeous, buxom, 6'1" woman, she was being asked by the diminutive assistant coach, Nate, you always seem to own the room when you walk in. And Rebecca corrected him and said, are you kidding? I'm a woman in a man's profession. I have to carry myself this way. If not to convince the others about me, at least to convince myself. So she taught her pose, her power pose, which is she summons inside this like deep inner roar, and she reaches up to the ceiling and then makes this like literal like tiger pose, so that she can take up space and so that she can believe that in herself. And then when she walks into the room, she owns her space. And if in any way that gives her presence, so that maybe the other male football owners in the room take her seriously, great. But if not, she at least can have her own self-ownership of her own space, so that she knows that she doesn't have to be invited to the table. She invites herself to the table and she takes up space. So woman in the gym that is feeling like you need to make yourself small, hell no. Take up your space. You belong there just as much as anybody else does. And one small little tangent. I know I'm just going off, like I'm channeling. Sorry,
Keep
but
going.
there's so much in this story, Zachary, that like resonates with me. If somebody looks down at you or doesn't have time for you, it isn't necessarily about you, number one. And we don't even have to vilify that other person either. So who is like one of the kindest people in the gym? You. And you did take the time to listen to him, to listen to her and let her talk and hear her. Yet still also, rightfully so, you wanted to get your things done, and you had one earphone, in your ear, and that doesn't make you a bad person for you having an agenda and wanting to do what you need to do in the gym. It doesn't make you a bad person. And therefore, if you didn't listen to her, as long as you weren't rude about it, it's neither about you nor her. You both each have your space. You see what I'm saying with that?
Totally see what you're saying. Yes. I hope she listens, because, she was very honest about her resolution about wanting to get back in the gym and a more, I don't know that she used the word healthy, but active lifestyle. She wanted a more active lifestyle was the phrase she kept saying. But I think that there's a secondary benefit here. And to your point about owning your space, and if we think about the possibility of anybody launching some kind of endeavor that may in a way find themselves in an environment where there's an energy that they are somehow responding to, and that energy they may feel, it may make them feel small or question their space, that the secondary benefit is that you learn how to own your space. And I say that because that is definitely has been me and continues to be me, that I can get intimidated by new environments. So I really, when I was talking with her, saw so much of myself and what I'm still growing and learning and finding, in that, yes, maybe I want to continue to grow as a tennis player, which I've talked about, or a rock climber, or a baker, or a kind person, or a empathic person, whatever it is. That sometimes I find myself feeling small, and owning one's space, I think, is exactly what Simply Enough is about. And also maybe what she ends up learning as she's continuing or developing as she's pursuing her active lifestyle. So I hope she listens, but if not, maybe just by going to the gym and taking up that space, she will also learn to own her space, to your point. Is that, you understand what I mean?
And absolutely. And, when we're starting any new endeavor, of course, there's going to be overwhelm. And of course, there's going to be fear. And actually, if we recognize that of courseness, you know what I mean? Like if we acknowledge and recognize, like, yeah, I'm going to feel that way. There it is. There's that feeling of intimidation, and there's that feeling of fear. But then, in owning it, we're not denying it, but we're also not giving more power to it. Then we can do things anyway. So we're not waiting for the lack of fear, and we are not waiting for the lack of intimidation, and we're not waiting for, the perfect, to our last episode, that there is no perfect. We're not waiting for the perfect time. And when I don't feel afraid anymore, then I'm going to do it. Bravery and courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the recognition that fear is there and doing it anyway. So good on you, woman. You are courageous, you are brave, and you are a badass. And you are already all of that before you even stepped foot in the gym. So bring that badasseriness with you, and with that decision that you made yourself, and bring that with you into the gym. Own that space.
I wish I had a little pocket Elizabeth that I could just tuck into my lapel pocket and be like, oh, hold on, really sweet, nice lady. Hold on. You need to talk to my friend Elizabeth, which we can with our podcast, everybody. But in the moment, in real time, I wish I could have said those things to her. And now I can go back and say it to her, because being that cheerleader for her that you are doing right now is, I think, would have been so sweet for that moment for her. And also in who knows what tomorrow will look like or the day after. So can you somehow figure out how to do that? Make a little pocket Elizabeth, please.
I just honor her so much because, like I said, I am one of the most consistent donors to gym memberships. So the fact that she took that step beyond me, which is her ass is in the gym. Yeah. Good on her. That's not me. So I'm in awe of her. And so there's so much reason to own one's space. Mm-hmm. And again, she was more than enough before even stepping foot in the gym. So bring that with her in the gym.
Yeah. Yeah. And also to my friend that said that she wanted to start to listen to some more podcasts, and then also recognized that she liked the messaging of some of our earlier podcasts, and then just didn't keep up for whatever reason. Yeah. There's no judgment in that. And then admittedly was like, oh gosh, I have to quote unquote catch up now. And there was this like feeling of being overwhelmed, even though there was a recognition that she wanted to do this for herself. I said essentially the same thing, like, just do it. Like, pick an episode, read a summary, and just start from there. There's no test. Like, I'm not obviously testing you. This is all for you and for us. I mean, selfishly, but also like, own your space, own you. Like, you want to pick and choose and dibble dabble where you want, by all means. That feeling of being overwhelmed, if there's any way that I could participate in helping to just dissipate that sense of being overwhelmed. Certainly if she had any beliefs about what I was thinking or feeling or anything that I had, I wanted to liberate her from that. Like, no, you do you. This is about you. So you pursue it in whichever way makes sense to you.
I just can't help but laugh because you know how there's certain catchphrases you hear me say and now we say in terms of, is it though?
Is it though?
Or how's that working out for you? Well, another thing that I often say to my clients is, where's the blank police? Meaning, where's the podcast police and where's the gym police? Like, what is there to be afraid of? There, and which is akin to what you said, which is there's no exam on this. Yeah. There is no test. It's just the process. It's just the experience. There is no there. You know what I mean? There is no outcome that you have to build up to, in order to say completed and rubber stamped done. It's just the experience. Just experience it in the way that you want to experience it. There is no police to it. There is no judge to it. There is no exam to it. There is no there. And when we look at, this is a little akin to, targeted goals versus direction of objective in a similar fashion, relative to when we're starting something new. It's just about what is the next step. Don't look at the whole staircase. Just what is the next step? And by the way, celebrate the decision to take that step. You're
reminding me of part of the conversation. She said she hadn't gone as many days as she had wanted to. And so I got to take a little simply enoughness and say, but how many days did you go?
Yes. Celebrate the small wins.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
But it's just wonderful. And I just feel like her feeling is very universal. And I dare say that she allow herself the grace of recognizing all of those power lifters and the regular gym goers and whoever it is that is intimidating her, whether they are purposely intimidating her, but I bet you they're not, because I bet you they're in their own zone doing what they need to do. Yes. And that's what I mean about like, it's not about judging the others, and it's not about being judged. All of those that are very experienced and feel very comfortable in that space and are comfortable. They don't even seem comfortable. People like you, I'm sure, are comfortable, started somewhere. And I think about, like even we talked about this in the past, like even in training to be a surgeon, and I have, when I have residents under me and I'm teaching them arthroscopy, and we talked about this in the previous episode, nobody was born a surgeon. Mm-hmm. And certainly for me, like I talked about in a previous episode, I was not a born arthroscopist, yet that is my specialty now. Like that's all I do now. But boy, those first, months and even year of learning arthroscopy, I declared I would never be an arthroscopist, and maybe I'm not meant to be a surgeon. Mm-hmm. Everything is literally just a process, mm-hmm. and it's about taking the next step and not prejudging ourselves. Mm-hmm. I find myself coaching my residents that way, in saying, like, when they get frustrated, that something that took me, 5 minutes, is taking them honestly 45 minutes. It's because it's a process. It's mm-hmm. not, very few things are pure, born, given, mm-hmm. gifted talent. There's a lot of development of gifts and the development of talent.
No, I think it's an excellent reminder, particularly for us in January, for those of us that do establish some kind of objective or goal or resolution, that if it is the launch of something new, that you're in the beginning, and the beginning is going to come with a whole set of characteristics that are going to be different than somebody else who is a lot further along in that endeavor. And that's okay. And that's totally okay. And you're so good at this, Elizabeth, that I'm going to try, and we'll see what happens. But to find those cheerleaders like you who champion them in the beginning and celebrate the beginning, because I wonder, and speaking out loud, I wonder how many things I have pursued that maybe didn't stick for whatever reason, but maybe partially didn't stick because I didn't acknowledge that I was in the beginning of something. Yes. And that the beginning can be clunky and frustrating, and you may hit some motivation walls, or you may stagnate, or whatever may happen. You may have successes, or what, we don't like necessarily the word successes, but let's just say, but just the idea that you are in the beginning of something, and that alone bears recognition. So thank you for reminding us of that. For those of us that are in January, and maybe we're starting to, see our resolution kind of clearer, remember, you're in the beginning of something, and mm-hmm. that's what it is. It's not plus or minus. It just is. And it's the thief of joy is comparison. Is that what you've told us?
Well, I haven't. Teddy Roosevelt.
Teddy Roosevelt. Yes. You've reminded us.
Comparison is a thief of joy.
Yes. So in this case, to this wonderful woman or anybody else that's pursuing an endeavor in an environment where there may be others that they are witness to that are a lot more comfortable in that environment, just remember, you're in your beginning.
I just love how we can quote, literature and science and research, and then also quote pop culture. So there is this movie called The Atom Project on Netflix, and it's with Ryan Reynolds and Mark Ruffalo. And I won't tell the whole story, not at all, but there was just this really powerful scene, or even a short snippet of the scene that I wrote down, because it just hit me so hard. And I've shared it since with a number of my clients. And it is about starting at the beginning. And Mark Ruffalo plays a professor, and he's telling his students when he puts up this almost impossible equation on the board, and he wants them to work on it. And he tells them, it's okay that it's not easy. It's not meant to be easy, but rather than moan about it, give yourself permission to be inadequate and then get to work. Be inadequate and then get to work. You can't be good at something unless you're willing to be crap at something first. And then you overcome it, and then you move through it. And then guess what? Then you become an expert at it. I just thought that passage or that what he said was so filled with self-compassion and grace, and then led to empowerment because of the recognition of, I am going to suck at it first. I am going to be crap at it. I am going to be inadequate. or I am going to be intimidated, and I am going to feel overwhelmed, and I am going to feel uncomfortable, and I am even going to feel fearful. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah. To that end, there's a I don't know, influencer, I guess is the right term. There's a gentleman that's on a number of social media pages like TikTok and Instagram and whatnot. His name is Joey Swoll, SWOLL. And he is just this massive guy, like 6 something, maybe 250, 300 pounds, just solid muscle. And a lot of his videos, if we're focusing just on the gym for a second, a lot of his videos are about elevating what would be more considerate behavior in the gym, or more welcoming behavior, and when to record, not record, how to pay attention to your fellow gym goers, etc. And he does a number of videos where he says essentially what you're saying, which is, somebody, you look at him and you think, this guy has lived in his gym his whole life, right? So he knows exactly what to do. And yet he says all the time, I have bad days in the gym. I drop weights on my foot. Sometimes I'll bump into somebody and I don't mean to, or I'm clumsy in the gym. He goes, in some days, I feel like very much a beginner at the same time, but I'm okay with that. And that's essentially what you're saying, is somebody who may even seem like a quote unquote expert, right? Somebody who's a lot further down that journey still can have that awareness of like, the learning process is a journey, and it's messy. It's messy. And that's totally
messy
okay.
And imperfect.
Messy and imperfect, to bring back to that. Yes. So even our belief, or that we put on somebody else who seemingly has it together or seemingly an expert, can still live with that awareness that the beginning is, it's still possible. It can still be kind of quote unquote embarrassing, if you will. And I love watching his videos because he lives what you just shared, that quote, all the time. And reminds us of that. So yes, it's specific to the gym, but I think you can extrapolate it beyond that.
And I wonder if he's the same guy who you told me something that I now tell clients and patients, and I tell this to our new friend in the gym, which is, don't wait till you get healthy to love yourself. Love yourself first, and that'll help you get healthy.
Yes.
Exactly, it's along those lines. What is, do you remember that better?
No, that was it.
Okay.
That was absolutely it. He also, and again, please, listeners, know that while I keep bringing up the gym, I really, brought up this story as a way of connecting with anybody that's set out some goal or objective or something for this time of the year, and how I think that there are really relevant themes and ideas that can be applied in any situation. So his messaging is, yes, pursue that goal at the same time that there's an awareness that where you are in your current state is beautiful in and of itself. And I have always appreciated that, because I take it not just as somebody who goes to the gym, but also somebody who has other pursuits and endeavors. I feel like it's such a strong message that I have taken with me and applied to other areas of my life.
To your point about how this isn't, the story happens to be about the gym, but it doesn't have to just be about the gym and workouts. I would actually like to make an even stronger emphasis, which is in my sports medicine practice, taking care of, uber elite athletes, national champions, right, Olympians, Paralympians, I know many a person in excellent physical physique and physical health that actually aren't healthy, because healthy isn't just the absence of disease. Healthy is vitality and a feeling of wholeness. And so it's not just about the abs or the biceps or the workouts in the gym. What we're talking about here in terms of owning your space, whether you're intimidated or fearful or not, you can actually not even have a goal in mind. When we talk about the man spread, like the man spread is, some guy with a capital G just sitting there. Don't just think that you take up your space when you're about to start something, or when you're about to make a statement, or when you're about to take on a megaphone or anything like that. take up space just by being. You own your space, even in your moments of quietude and rest and meditation, because you matter and you have value, not just when you are about to do something or before you are about to earn something or achieve something. Own your space purely because you are, period.
The idea for somebody who is so goal oriented and is always looking forward and is always looking for like what is next, that is very much something that that is just germane to who I am. That just stopping and pausing and recognizing in the now that there's beauty and quote unquote perfection just in that. You driving home that point today, I want to thank you, because that really stuck with me last week and it's sticking with me again, because I find myself constantly looking forward rather than just looking down at where I am now. Particularly as we get so caught up in January about what we're going to do and where we're going to be and what we're looking forward to and all those things, that we've really focused over the last couple episodes about checking in where you are now, like taking the breath, finding the moment to just honor the beauty in the now and happily ever now, like just kind of checking in and seeing where you are now.
It's being present and mindful. Yeah. And when you really think about it, there really is only now.
Yeah.
We can recall our history and we can recall events in the past and we can project in the future, but there really only is now. And that's why, we often say also, we are not human doings. We are human beings. I, as a doctor, the reason why there's this ever so slight shift and pivot in my focus in terms of, career, though I love what I do, as a doctor, there's so much focus on illness and fixing and treating and curing. And so that focus on illness, I think, needs a complement to that, which is, how about the focus of wellness, and ultimately what is wellness? Well-being. It's not well-doing, it's well-being. And that's where the present is. And that's where mindfulness is, the verb be is in the present. It's in the now. Ultimately, there really is only now.
That harkens back to your introducing those of us that didn't know her to Nightbird, that wonderful artist who shared her song on America's Got Talent, and the judges in that. And please go back to that episode if you didn't get a chance to listen, because not only is, I think, a pretty interesting episode, but it also is an invitation to listen to her song. She was so much more than just what she was battling with at the time, which is the judges on the show wanted to focus on that. And she was reminding that there were so many other beautiful things going on with her life at that moment. And that's what I think you're hearkening back to right now is the now. And that's really all we can enjoy and really all that we can be in right now, which is the now. So I am so glad that this happened this morning at the gym and that I could bring it up here, because I knew that it would just provide so many different jumping off points. And selfishly, I'm grateful, because like my head is just kind of spongy right now with just so many different thoughts and connections with other things that we've talked about. And it was clearly something that was so much at the forefront of her mind, that she kept saying, I don't want to take up space. I don't want to take up other people's space. I don't want to get into other people's space. Like that phrase she said, and I think our exchange was maybe a couple minutes at most. She said many, many, many times. And I think there's more to really unpack there. And to your story, I wonder how much as a woman that's just been something she's gotten and internalized again and again and again, in a way that as a man, I can't necessarily understand, but would love to know more about.
Yeah. It's literally about making oneself small, and one isn't enough and one isn't worthy of taking up space. And then when you juxtapose next to, some alpha that easily takes up space, whether it's their girth because they're these big bodybuilders, or just their presence and their ownership of their space, it's a natural reaction to recoil and get even smaller, even further. So yeah, 5'1", Filipino woman of color, immigrant in an alpha male profession. I absolutely know what that means in terms of taking up space. And that's, I mean, I love my pretty heels, but there is a subconscious reason I know why I do wear heels, so that I do stand taller. You know, I'm not kidding myself. I'm still shorter than everybody else, but there is just this like element of I feel like I'm taller than I am, and that's okay. If that's what I need to do, that's okay.
I don't know why this makes me think about the strategy that we're told that if you ever face a bear, you need to like make yourself as big as possible to like, you know, to at least hold your space so that the bear understands that you like there's a worthy opponent kind of thing. I don't know why I'm thinking about this.
Yeah, which is kind of what Rebecca in Ted Lasso assumes that pose, whether it's bear or whether it's tiger. It's this like make yourself bigger, and kind of a little bit along the lines of what is it? What is that phrase? Fake it till you make it.
Yep. Yes.
You fool yourself. You get your body into believing, and then you get your brain into believing that that is your space, to the point where you practice it enough that it's not even a conscious choice. You now find yourself taking up that space. Honestly, ballerinas, who I think are just the most incredible athletes, male and female ballet dancers, it's in the practice of how they hold themselves and, you know, get taught to imagine that there is a fish line rope that is pulling yourself to stand tall. That is how and why they carry themselves when they're not on stage and when they're not dancing, but that becomes their posture. Soldiers, same way. They practice holding their shoulders back and down so their chests are lift up, that it then becomes second nature. That is that practice of taking up space. And sometimes, yes, one needs to get taught, or to be perfectly honest, retaught how to do that. What I mean by being retaught is my being a shoulder and knee specialist. It's amazing how much shoulder pain actually comes from poor posture. And by posture, I mean shoulder posture. I don't even mean, you know, the abs and the core and standing up like a soldier or standing up like a ballerina. It's literally shoulder posture. And what I often tell patients is, you know, it's ironic, when we were born, this will probably have to be a YouTube thing, but when we were actually born with our muscles perfectly where they're supposed to be and positioned, which means our shoulders are back and down. So kind of like if you imagine, here in Hawaii, I say edamame, but imagine like a little pea and your shoulder blades are squeezing it and not squeezing tense up with your shoulders up, but back and down. That's where we are meant to be. And that's how we were born to be, naturally and perfectly. But our world has brought our shoulders forward. And in that hunching, our muscles are now at a disadvantage and they're not working efficiently and correctly. So we ironically have to retrain ourselves back and relearn how we were born to be. And that actually helps our efficiency and helps our comfort, so that we are not shouldering so much pain, if you will. Wow, that was a channeling diatribe. Not even channeling, that's just rote, because I say that in my daily talks of so many patients. But how did I even get to that? What were we talking about? I put on doctor hat just then.
Oh, I'm so glad you did, because you were talking about how ballet dancers and soldiers learn to stand upright and to really like find their posture, right, and their alignment. And then you went into how we have conditioned ourselves to be more hunched over, and how we need to be retaught how to stand in a way.
Even though that's the natural way that we were supposed to be.
Yes.
So it's actually, though I'm saying that we have to be taught or retaught, it's actually about remembering and relearning, because that's actually how we are naturally perfectly born that way. And then it's our world, you know, our burdens, our habits that have brought our shoulders hunch forward, which, by the way, makes us smaller and closed in, as opposed to we are meant to actually naturally be open to the world and looking up. That is actually our natural posture.
Okay. So as you were talking about how you are a high heel lover, I kept thinking about this woman in the gym and how she could wear heels. I think that'd be pretty friggin' badass if she wore heels in the gym, but most of the time she can't. So I was trying to think of ways in which there can be some kind of energy or posture shift or something akin to wearing heels that she could put on, quote unquote, to fake it until you make it in the gym. And you just gave it, which is literally just remembering shoulders back and down. And that openness, that alone, I also can feel it. And I hope she can, and others too. I feel more in my space. Like I really do.
You take up space.
Yes.
And then with that, look up.
Yeah.
Right. To your point, you said earlier about looking down, and almost not recognizing and appreciating the moment because we're so like looking down. Now we're going to get a little spiritual, but that's one of my favorite thought processes when I pray and meditate is actually, I like to look up as if that's how I see the face of God. And that's how I see God in all things. And that's how one is open and present to the moment and owning that space that one is in by looking up.
I'm very much looking forward to seeing her again and inviting her to listen to this episode, because I think it has given me and our listeners just so much to think about.
Take up space, everybody. And if you are afraid or intimidated, that's okay. Everything starts somewhere. And not everything has to be an action anyway. So though I just said everything starts somewhere, it's okay to actually not even be starting anything. And it's more than okay to just be in the moment, in a place of mindfulness and presence. Take up that space.
And always remember that you are simply enough.
Just as you are.
As you are now, in the present. Simply enough, just as you are. Period.
Mwah. Mwah. Love you, everybody. Go take up space.